Hey Eurovision fans, in this Eurovision analysis video we're going to talk about Stig Karlsen, the Norwegian head of delegation. He's done an interview with a Hungarian Eurovision podcast going into all the details about Norway's recent success in Eurovision, also discussing what's wrong with Denmark and some of the changes for Melodi Grand Prix, including the Autotune controversy. So let's kiki. So this review was originally going to be part of my Eurovision news update, which I released in the last week, but because it went on for so long, I actually decided to make it into its own episode because I filmed it last week. I'm wearing different clothes and I got a different haircut. Sorry about that. Let's go to last week's Tom. So, main news story for today is about Stig Karlsen, who is the Norwegian head of delegation. He did an interview with a Hungarian podcast talking about the Norwegian delegation and about various other things as well. It was a really great interview. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend checking it out. The questions in it are really interesting. He's got loads of good points. He sounds really clear-headed with like a very clear strategy for how to get the best result from the resources that Norway has. So the first interesting thing about this interview was hearing him say that it was a 365-day job. That particularly stood out to me because of the situation with Ireland, where a lot of people in the Irish delegation are not year-round on the delegation. They cover other things in other parts of the year, and then they have this like short period where they're kind of dedicated to Eurovision, but otherwise it's like only a small portion of their job. So the fact that Norway has this year-round dedication, I think it's not just him, there's other people on the team as well who are dedicated to it year-round. That is a huge part for me, being able to put in the extra legwork, make those extra connections with the people, just absolutely dedicate everything you can to this one focused goal. So the host asked him what was the secret to Norway's recent success. You know, Norway have been qualifying pretty much always constantly. Their last non-qualification was Agnete in 2016, and then Stella Mwangi didn't qualify either, but every other year they've qualified pretty comfortably. And then also they've had like a lot of top 10s recently. Stig put it down to finding good songs and good artists, which is not the most shocking strategy, but obviously it's easier said than done actually finding those people. But he talked a lot about how he goes out, he does a lot of lunches, he does a lot of dinners, he does a lot of like networking, meeting people, building up relationships so that they feel comfortable sending their songs into the national finals. So this is the concept of it being year round. It's not just this intense period from kind of February until May. He is building up this network, this infrastructure, so that they can consistently have this high quality MGP. And I think MGP every year is just, oh man, it's one of my favorite national finals. Every single year I look forward to it so much. The quality is crazy. I always get like 5 or 6 downloads from it. They've built up a system now which is repeatable, as opposed to an internal selection where you're a little bit more at the mercy of what songs are submitted to you. You don't have as much of a production system. He also talked about the songwriting camps and said that's not everything, but obviously they do get quite a few songs from MGP from that every year. Like Give That Wolf a Banana came from the songwriting camp. And he talked about his interaction as well, going around to all the different artists, kind of coaching them on what makes a good song for MGP. Because obviously it's a little bit different than just writing a normal song. You do need to think about what your staging going to look like. Is there a story, whatnot? So he's giving them like tips from his perspective, his experience of being involved in Eurovision, what tends to work, how could you make a song that's even more appealing to the audience. And then he also mentioned about the Eurovision communities, getting in touch with them and having a dialogue with the Eurovision fans as well. Now, quite controversially, he did also speak about Denmark, saying that the reason that they don't do as well is because they don't care and that they have too many quote-unquote shitty songs. I didn't say it, Stig said it. But yeah, he uses Denmark as an example to contrast like the year-round dedication that the Norwegian delegation has. And obviously that's partly due to resources as well. They are paid a salary that allows them to work year-round. But with Denmark, he just said they don't care, they don't put enough effort in, there's not enough passion. So that was very interesting to hear from kind of like a behind-the-scenes perspective on what's wrong with Denmark. Because we know Denmark hasn't qualified now 3 years in a row. Ever since they won in 2013, just generally Denmark has delivered fairly rarely. You know, they had Rasmussen, who was, I think he was top 5 of the televote. But other than Rasmussen, yeah, Denmark have done almost nothing. Another controversial comment he made was about the jury televote split. So he was saying that he feels if televoters don't feel heard consistently, they may feel like they're disenfranchised. He also suggested he would like to see a bigger split for the televote in the final, like 60-40 or 70-30. Now, personally, I disagree with him on this point. I think if you look at the stats of all the winners since 2009, which is when the jury televote split came back, the televote winner has been in the top 2 every single year apart from Måns Zelmerlöw in 2015, and even then, Måns was only 7 points behind Russia, who get a lot of diaspora points anyway in the televote. But with the jury, in 4 of the last 5 years, the Eurovision winner hasn't even been top 2 of the jury. So Neda, Duncan Lawrence, Måneskin, and Kalish Orchestra, all 4 of them weren't in the top 2 of the jury. So if you look at the stats for the last 13 years, they basically show you have to be top 2 of the televote to win, but you only need to be top 4 of the jury. So in my opinion, the televote holds more points. I talk about this in more detail in my Grand Final 2 video, where I show that the winner of the televote gets more points than the winner of the jury pretty much every single year. So yeah, I disagree with him on this, and I do think this is a little bit of him maybe favoring what suits Norway. If we look at them in recent years, they've done better with the televote than the jury. This year with Alessandra, she had a very poor jury show, that was part of it. Give That Wolf a Banana as well did better with the televote, and then obviously Kaino did a lot better with the televote because they won it. So I do think this is more just something that would suit Norway as opposed to thinking what would be better for Eurovision. So yeah, I don't blame him, that's his job. He's going to obviously be a tiny bit biased. He spoke about MGP and the Autotune there, and he clarified that really the Autotune is just to fine tune the vocals a little bit. They vet all of the artists before they come in. Many of them they already know because he's been building up these relationships, but anyone who's a little bit of an unknown quantity, they do a rehearsal with them and see how are they at singing. So he mentioned that autotuning was just to make it sound a little bit better. You can't rescue a bad singer with autotune. And he actually thinks that a little bit of autotuning will come into Eurovision in the future. It's already pretty prevalent in the music industry already. So this reassured me a lot. I was a little bit worried we might get someone who was so heavily autotuned that when they won MGP and went to Eurovision final, they couldn't sing. But he's pretty much alleviated my concerns with that. They're not like turning the autotune dial up to maximum with anyone. It's just a small little turn. They're only turning it like 10 degrees. And the final thing he talked about was Hungary coming back to the competition, because obviously this podcast was a Hungarian one. He didn't really seem to have like a great knowledge of what was going on behind the scenes. He definitely wanted to come back, and he was encouraging the Hungarian fan clubs to kind of come together and really show that there's a massive interest in the contest. But yeah, he wasn't able to provide any insight into what the actual reason was. I didn't realize that there wasn't actually an official statement given out saying these are the reasons why, other than them saying they wanted to focus on promoting Hungarian music within Hungary or something kind of wishy-washy like that. Basically, we want to support national music. You know, the actual reason is most likely Viktor Orban and trying to appease his conservative base or whatever. But yeah, I really do hope that we get Hungary back at some point, but I haven't heard any news to suggest that it's going to happen soon. Okay, so that's my review of the interview with Stig Karlsen. Really interesting insights there from a head of delegation who I really think has got his finger on the pulse, had a lot of success recently with his country. So great to get that insight, because those kind of behind the scene things with the delegations have a huge impact on how countries do that decision making, staging, lighting, concept, everything. It's kind of one of the big unknown quantities that we don't really get to see. We just get to see the final product and the performer, but we don't know what happened to build up to that moment. And a lot of those decisions are made by the head of delegation and their team. Thanks to Eurovision's podcast for that. So what did you think about the interview with Stig Karlsen? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. If you want to support the channel, I'll leave some links in the description. If you like this analysis video and you want to watch some more, I'll leave a couple of them for you here. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in another Eurovision analysis video very soon. Goodbye. Blah, 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 blah.